an uncle in my neighborhood who came up to me. He saw, I think it was PM and Assembly's video supposedly selling some financial product and recommending it. Can you tell me which one is the right video? Because I really want to invest. I was a bit flawed because I was like, it's not real at all. Putting someone's face and putting the address and encouraging people to, what are you trying to achieve? Don't you think that's something we want to get people to pause and not do? Revenge porn and things like that. Within minutes or hours, these things could be spread quite quickly. So given those circumstances, we want to be able to have the powers to necessarily take it down or provide the orders so that it could be blocked and not be seen by others in Singapore. We are not exactly the police in that we won't go around monitoring and looking out for the crimes or like any online harm. It has to be user reported. It has to be victim reported. So it's only triggered when someone makes a report.
This episode is brought to you in partnership with the Ministry of Digital Development and Information. We spoke to Minister of State Rahayu Mahzam about Singapore's new Online Safety, Relief and Accountability Act, which aims to give victims of online harms quicker relief and hold perpetrators accountable. Enjoy the conversation, and now on to the podcast. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Yala, your thrice weekly podcast where we talk about the hottest news with a touch of what, Terence?
Good old humor.
Good old humor, man.
Yeah.
It's a interesting episode because we live in the digital world.
Yeah, and this is something that I think we debated quite a bit last year, right?
Yeah.
When it came up,
When it came up. So now we have someone who's been instrumental in the implementation of what we're going to talk about. And we have with us Rahayu Mahzam, the Minister of State for Digital Development and Information and Minister of State for Health. Welcome.
Hi,
welcome.
Thank you very much, Harish and Terence, for having me here.
Yeah.
Good to have you. Yeah, we did cover the launch of the bill, which is now an act.
The Online Safety, Relief and Accountability Act.
Right? Yeah, when it came out. Because it was an 8-hour discussion in Parliament.
Debate, yes.
Yeah.
8 hour. And how long was the whole process of getting the bill together?
Oh my. The genesis of it would, I think, go back a few years because all this happened in different events, right? I mean, if you ask me personally, I had encountered or thought about it even before I came into MDDI. And in fact, before MDDI was formed, because it was previously Ministry of Communications and Information, we see how we are all still sort of navigating this online space. And there's always a good and bad with technology. And we started seeing really online toxic behavior that was really not something we wanted to see. We started to have to put definition and describe what online harm is, because there was a point in time when we couldn't even put a finger to what is online harm.
Yeah.
So I remembered we had this Alliance for Action when I was in the earlier iteration of MDDI, the Ministry of Communication and Information. I was there together with SMS-SIMN. We were overseeing the AFA called the Sunlight AFA. We were looking at online harms affecting women and girls. At that juncture, we were discussing it, and we had a very good group of people from different expertise and experiences. And there were anecdotes and stories and experiences of people who were either cyberbullied or where their images were inappropriately used and put online. If you recall, there was that Asatiza polling case and a few incidents of cancel campaigns.
Yeah.
And there was this whole sense of what is this that's happening to us and how do we navigate it? How do we put in words how we should guide our behavior? And so to me, it took a few years for us to kind of really accept that this is really not right and really put into structure and a framework how we were going to navigate this space and how we were going to meaningfully guide our society in this. And so there was a lot of engagement. We had to really come up with something, learning from other countries.
Yeah.
And this is still a fairly nascent space. So I would say this took a bit of time, but still relatively It had to be fast because it had to respond to the very quickly evolving nature of the landscape.
But when you say nascent space, do you mean that Singapore is one of the first countries in the world to also try to tackle this with a legal framework?
Well, in a way, we are one of the first countries to have an OSC, an Online Safety Commission, an agency of that nature to help citizens navigate and address issues in a timely and effective fashion. That's the structure of it is definitely quite new, but everywhere in the world, UK, US, Europe, even Malaysia, our neighbours, we are all looking at ways to address online harms. And online safety is a key thing that we want to have, especially for our young children. I mean, you may have heard of the recent issue of Australia and other countries, France, Malaysia, looking at how you ban social media, for example. So there are many dimensions of online safety, and online harms in this particular fashion was something that we really wanted to help people with. And there were many different things that we had already done. We had already done an online safety bill some years back, by which we amended the Broadcasting Act and put in place certain measures and certain controls to protect the space from unsavory content. We already had the Online Criminals Harms Act, OCHA. We already had POFMA. We had FICA. And so this is one aspect of online harms that we wanted to create so that victims of online harms could easily and effectively get relief. There are options for them, and that we can actually really set some standards and markers in society of what we think are unsavory behavior and we don't want.
So that means what you're saying is that it covers stuff that wasn't covered by the ones before, or is it just making it more accessible?
It augments what is already in place. So basically there are three sort of main things that came out of this act. First is the setting up of the Online Safety Commission, which is, like I said, we are one of the few countries that has this. And this agency then is will then be best placed to help provide timely relief. Second, it created statutory torts, meaning now there are some identified or circumscribed harms which then people could sue on. They could bring this case to court and claim damages from the person who caused them this harm. And then thirdly, it also looked at how we can take away the online anonymity in certain cases so that victims could pursue their claims against people who harmed them. And if that person was trying to hide behind the veil of anonymity, that could be something that could be lifted in appropriate circumstances. So there were new dimensions that were added to provide protection and relief to victims.
I guess that's one of the interesting things about this, even when we talked about it on our podcast, is that the focus really seems to be on helping the victim, seek help and redress sooner rather than later. Whereas, I mean, you talked about other things, whereas FICA, POFMA and all that, where you don't, maybe the victim isn't as immediate.
Yes.
You don't see it as, it's not a person who immediately gets harmed, right? So in some sense, there is, I think broadly, a lot of support for something like this, right? But in the process of drafting it and all, was there any particular countries that you were looking at as like a reference point that, this is the standard that we kind of need to look up to? Or was it a case of like what you said, you kind of have to study and there are pros and cons of each place that you're looking at?
Yes, we had to look at a few places and contextualize it into Singapore's needs. Australia was one country that we looked at quite closely because they also have a safety commission, e-safety commission, and they also had to navigate between the different types of harms. So in defining some of those harms, we looked at those places. In general, we often looked at UK, US, Europe, because they were also evolving in the online safety space. But I guess specifically, we really needed to figure out our own definitions of what constituted the harms and how you described those harms. And that was a lot of work because it's like really starting from zero and having to put a description to some of those and then deciding which ones merited, ability for people to then make claims, statutory torts, and really putting in place the necessary powers that could make this really implementable. So earlier, Harish, when you mentioned that, I'm instrumental in implementing, I squirmed a little inside because firstly, I am a very small piece in this. There was a lot of...
You're the public face of it.
One of the public faces even at that, because there was a lot of work. My colleagues from especially MinLaw and MDDI who had to really come up with this. And of course, we had help from AGC in the drafting of the law. So I really want to kind of give credit to that. Also, that it is not in a way fully done yet. Our work really, there's so much still to do because OSC is still being set up. We're looking at the first half of this year, and there's a lot of apprehension because we also don't know what will happen once we open the doors, right? How much flooding we would get, and how that could be operationalized. So there's quite a bit of work. So I squirmed for two reasons. One, because there were many people involved, and there are going to be many people whom we're going to have to rely on. And also because the work is really not completed in a way. We've described it, and we have actually engaged, and we're preparing as much as we can. But it is still quite a long road still.
So in drafting this bill, how do you navigate between something that is meant for the greater good, but also not being too strict such that it could be, like curbing anyone who wants to voice a contentious issue, whistleblow some malpractice? How do you balance that?
That's why we had to describe the powers that we would give to the OSC meaningfully. And we, in a way, described it such that there was some liberty for the OSC with objective standards to decide in each case whether there was public interest, whether those were things that is a personal thing versus something that would affect the larger public. And the description of the harm had to also be very clear. So there was definitely a balance that we needed to achieve and arrive at. And it was important that when it is then implemented or when it is to be operationalized, the commissioner had the necessary liberties and powers to decide. It is objective, but yet you have a little bit of flexibility to look at the case in context. So that was what helped us along. So key thing, as you mentioned earlier, Terence, it's very victim-centric. It's very victim-led. So you looked at it from that perspective. Then you looked at it from a context of what were the objective standards you needed to set in place. And we also created an ability where there was going to be reconsideration and an appeal through an appeal panel. So the infrastructure, if I could use the term, of the Act was had the victims in mind and had the public in mind to make sure that we had a fair balance between allowing for people to actually talk about something that is important to the larger crowd without necessarily causing harm that would be unfair to the victim and damaging to the victim.
But from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like the process is if someone reports, it's taken down first, or and then allowed for appeals to come in. Is that generally
so if process? I could maybe just expand on that a little bit. Actually, firstly, you must meet the criteria of the online harms that we described. So just to give you a couple of examples,
13,
intimate
right?
image, 13, right? Yeah. But say the first 5, we have doxing, online stalking, intimate image abuse, online harassment, and
image-based child abuse.
Image-based child abuse. So these were like the key first few, right, that we wanted to touch on. And you must first fall into that definition before you can. It's not like someone said something I don't like, does it fall into this category? So that's the first. And what we also wanted the public to do was to still go to the social media platforms, to the platforms first, to say, look, this has infringed on my rights based on this criteria. Please take it down. And we gave, so it's a user reporting style. And we wanted that to still be in place. So we've also engaged the platforms, by the way, to tell them that, hey, they have to do this.
Yeah.
But when they fail or fall short of it, then you go to OSC. And when you go to OSC will then make that quick assessment. And based on whatever criteria, again, it depends on the complexity of the case and the needs, and they will then make the appropriate orders and issue the appropriate directions to either the communicators of the online harm, to the administrators, or the platforms as necessary to then do that takedown.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I mean, the structure of the OSC, I know it's a lot being in development. And I mean, as an analogy, is the OSC kind of like the police station of the online world? Like a very easy touch point, or the easiest touch point for people to access?
You could describe it as a place where people could get help, because we do have a no wrong door policy. But we are not exactly the police in that we won't go around monitoring and looking out for the crimes or like any online harm. It has to be user reported. It has to be victim reported. So it's only triggered when when someone makes a report.
Okay.
So in a way, it is akin, I suppose, maybe, I don't know if this is the best description, but akin to an enforcing yet social agency to try and help provide that support for victims so that it's timely. Because we all know how fast things can spread. The key job of the OSC is to stop online harm and to facilitate it. I guess maybe to kind of rewind back, what we were seeing was this. We had a couple of surveys and studies. For one, we had this MDDI Digital Perceptions Survey. And 4 out of 5 people were actually had seen online harm. And there were also studies where we actually saw that, or rather we did this reporting, right? We had a requirement for we had this online safety report, and we saw that the takedown period was 5 days or more, for the platforms. And we saw that there was a bit of a delay in their response. We also had victims making that feedback that it didn't happen as fast. I would say that I think over time with our feedback, the platforms may also have evolved. I mean, everything moves quite quickly in the online space. So this is like maybe even like a few months back, there may have been improvement, but this was a year back. These are the things that led us to say that, hey, look, we need to have something so that we could push the platforms, we could make sure that people could get support if, let's say, they weren't being supported by the platforms. So that was why we created the structure such that we could assist with the takedowns, we could assist with the orders that was necessary to curb the spreading of some of this online harms that was put up. Because if you think about it, if it was an intimate image abuse, you would have, and this was typical, I mean, this is what I kind of started off with, victims who had their images put up. And this intimate images, revenge porn and things like that, they go to the platforms, perhaps it was not as fast. And, within minutes or hours, these things could be spread quite quickly. So given those circumstances, we want to be able to have the powers to necessarily take it down or provide the orders so that it could be blocked and not be seen by others in Singapore. And that was really what motivated some of these actions.
But how then are the social media platforms, how are they seen as a partner or stakeholder in this process? And how are they receiving it? Because I think in some ways you are trying to bridge that gap, that delay that they have, that they because they don't take down things fast enough, so the victims suffer more, right? So in some way, is it a bit of an indictment of like the social media platforms? So are they looking at this bill as like, oh, this is more work for us, it's very troublesome? How are they taking it? Or at least how have the discussions been?
So in Singapore, I would say also we have a fairly healthy relationship with the platforms. We engage them quite frequently. We are quite stern and strict with certain requirements that we've had of them. But we also have conversations because we don't want to just impose laws and then after that it's not workable. So with this in particular, we've been engaging them quite significantly, and we continue to engage them with other things that we want to put in place. I would say the response was healthy. I think they all acknowledge this. But what people might not realize is that they get a lot, of requests. And sometimes it may not have been attended to because it's just so many. And I think with the example I gave, it's very easy because it's like quite clear cut, right? Oh, this is wrong. But not everything is like that. So if let's say it is a comment or if it is a cancel campaign, so to speak, that may not be so easily discernible. And it may not be something that you can immediately respond to. But when the government comes and say, hey, this is wrong, can you quickly take... in fact, there were views that some of it was welcome because then they could distinguish between the real complaints or the real feedback versus those who just like flood them with, so this one, please take down, please take down, please take down, and so they welcomed it. So I guess we've managed to have a very fruitful and meaningful discussion that's constructive, with a view that it's not that we want to penalize you, but we want to work together. There may be some gaps. This terminology that was used in the past is this trusted flagger, because if you flag that this is not right and then you're the government and you're this agency, it helps them in a way. So that was not necessarily looked at negatively. In fact, they are with us with some of these things. We really don't want these unhealthy things happening in our online spaces. So we got support for what we wanted to do.
But what would happen if, let's say, for some reason, they don't adhere to it? I can imagine they get a whole bunch of queries day in, day out. But I mean, while we live on social media platforms, I'm not the most, I'm pretty skeptical of relying on tech companies to do what is right. Then let's say if the OSC goes to them saying, okay, we verified this needs to be taken down, and they don't. What will happen to them?
There are penalties. So there are fines that they have to pay or comply with. Or so we sort of like, if the platforms don't do it, then we can go to the internet service provider, and so we have powers. It has been constructed such that we will have powers to make sure that it is workable. But I will tell you that some of these things are really meant for deterrence more than we expect it to be not complied with. We put it so that people will know this is what happens if you don't comply. But from conversations and discussions, I believe there is a almost unanimous understanding and appreciation that this is an important thing to do, and this is good to have.
I think it's important that there's teeth also, because
exactly
financial penalties for tech companies, like, for them it's like a drop in the giant ocean. But at the same time, I also was wondering, like, how about, because technology moves so fast, like when new social media platforms appear like that, and some of them I don't even know whether to call them social media platforms, like Reddit or even YouTube itself and things like that. How do we quickly, okay, you are one of the designated social media platforms?
So that's under the Broadcasting Act.
Okay.
So at the moment with designated 6, right, because these are the more common ones. As and when we need to, we will definitely put in the necessary registration or legislation there. But I would say that in a lot of these sources, especially with Austria, we have built in that flexibility to adapt. So like with online harms, we would have the ability to sort of add on, because we know that, it's really almost a whack-a-mole kind of situation. You deal with one and then you get another one. So a lot of the things, I guess some people would say it's really half full or half empty. Some of these things should be done yesterday kind of thing, right? We want to keep doing it fast. But at the same time, it is also things that will need time so that we could enforce meaningful laws that will actually help protect our people. So that's why whatever we do in the online space, and I think with a lot of things, it has to be multi-pronged. It cannot just, it's not just about legislation. Legislation is definitely one key thing the government has to put in place. But there has to also be public education. There is also has to be efforts to engage other stakeholders and partners like parents, the social media companies, community partners to help educate and proliferate this message. So for us, it is one of the many things that we are doing at MDDI to create a safe ecosystem for our people, especially for young ones.
So, you mentioned deterrence for the tech platform, but is it also a deterrence for perpetrators of online harm?
Yes, indeed. Because, as I mentioned, there is statutory torts that have been created. So technically, because in the past it wasn't clear if it is something you could claim damages on, for example, right? Because law, it's common law, then you've kind of to describe it before you can actually claim something in court. But we've made it clear that these things are wrong and would entitle the victim to make a claim against the perpetrator. So that allows for us to, one, I suppose, give an option to the victims to seek claims and damages, but two, set that standard of what we feel that is not acceptable behavior in society and community.
And I mean, that sort of penalties for the perpetrator is not like...
It's not the platform, so it's the perpetrator. Yeah.
But at this point, before the OSRA and OSC kick in, well, there's nothing in place for people to be penalized for that?
Well, technically, if you're a good lawyer, you can try and find case law to sufficiently build your cases. It's a common law. And some of the things, if it is criminal, if it borders on, then you could take criminal action. But making claims and actually getting damages is a civil matter. It's not a criminal matter. And so in a way, there is a bit of a gap.
I see. I mean, I guess it's for lay people trying to understand differences between torts and common law and all. It might be worth just talking about what a scenario or two. So I think you mentioned doxing as one of the big online harms. But what if in that scenario, and this I think was brought up in Parliament also, where a scenario where a harasser, gets exposed or whistleblown by the victim, and then after that claims that, hey, my identity has been doxed. And my identity is now that I feel harassed now, even though I was actually the harasser, right? In situations like that, like how, who decides what is the appropriate action to take?
So, if you're talking about making claims, then this claim has to be brought to court. And therefore, the judge will then assess the facts of the matter and make a decision as to whether they are entitled to the claims.
Okay.
In as far as if it is an issue of a takedown where there is a danger to the person's safety because of the address or exposure, that is something then OSC can look at if it's not already done or taken down by the platforms. But really, it depends on the facts of the case. And I think there's some very clear things. That's why we want to kind of... a lot of things are almost like hypothetical. You kind of have to see it pan out, right, before we can kind of describe it. What is wrong about it? Calling people out or maybe like saying that something wrong is being done, is that wrong? No, not in itself. Is the action... Is the only thing for you to do is put it out online and let the whole world know and kind of point to the person? Or do you make a report? Do you make a complaint? Do you actually raise this to the appropriate authorities so that they can investigate? So we do want people to think about that rather than quickly just jump and then everything also put online and then put the person's address and picture and say, hey, this is the person. You kind of, that's where the social element of it, I feel, comes in, where you want people to pause a bit also, hopefully with this loss, to think what is right and not. Saying that something wrong has been done and action should be taken and giving a view of it, I don't think that's wrong. But actually putting someone's face and putting the address and encouraging people to, what are you trying to achieve? Don't you think that's something we want to kind of also get people to pause and not do? Because regardless of the sort of crime, doing something to target, to make that person a target is also a crime. Doxing is a crime in Pohang. So you want to think about what is the correct behavior and break that down a little bit for people. And I think as we navigate more and more cases and more things come up, then people will start to be, a bit more savvy, I suppose. I mean, there was this one point in time where there was a case, if you recall, this gentleman in his Bentley drove past the cars and, stopped to drop off
at a school,
in a school, right? Someone wrongly identified an individual and put his face up and put his name and all that. And it's irreversible in a sense because, that person was just traumatized.
Yeah, his crime was driving a Bentley, I suppose.
And also cutting queue. And
I know the wrong Bentley.
Wrong Bentley. Yes.
Yeah.
So, so the fact that happened and maybe a description and say, hey, this is not right behavior, I don't think that's in itself wrong. But to kind of then dox on top of that. So I think it's a good time to pause and kind of think of what it is that's right and not.
I guess that's interesting. It's not just the social media platforms, not just the the victims, but or the perpetrators, but also the general public about what you want to report and what you want to bring and put publicly, right? Yeah. You want everybody to take a pause also and think about what's the right action to do.
Not to be too trigger happy with.
But is that a tall order to ask? Because
of people?
Yeah, of people. Or I mean, maybe it's just I'm cynical, but it feels like the easiest thing to do is to just post online. Or is access to the OSC even has because you said the first step should be to consult the social media platform if they don't
request a takedown
for 24 hours, right? But is it also, I'm guessing if people see OSC as the first point and then they're told, okay, have you checked with the social media platform? If you haven't, then go to them first. Is that the goal of OSC to be like, okay?
So not in all cases. Yeah. For more urgent cases, I mean, like I say, intimate abuse or the image-based child abuse, those things are very serious. And if those things come to OSC,
that's urgent.
Yeah, that's urgent. So we make a decision. And you have to be sensible when you kind of roll out some of these things, right? You want to act on things that are important and are meaningful to act. But for things that are maybe of a lesser scale, you want to get the partners to be involved. And it's not a very complicated process, actually. It is really tell them to take down. If they don't take down, you come to me, I will assess and take it down.
It's like triaging it in some way.
It's triaging it. But we've also made it clear that with very urgent cases and significant ones that fall into those certain categories, we will be happy for, we will take that action. Also, I said earlier that there's no wrong door approach. And as we kind of adjust to this, if people do come to us, it's not like, okay, you go there first, we've got to start to educate and try and help. And the intent is that to try and be as helpful as possible and be to support people, because the whole point OSC is set up is to provide support to victims.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, as this is implemented as well, I mean, AI is advancing at a breakneck pace, right? We talk about deepfake news, deepfake porn, but even just our political leaders being deepfaked or even generated as AI figures in like music videos and stuff like that, right? Well, does
we are at.
Well, does the OSC does it come into play in these kind of situations? Because we have seen instances of our political leaders, even our ads on Facebook and stuff like this, that can lead to quite serious consequences in terms of people thinking that, oh wow, he's advocating for some cryptocurrency or something like.
So there is also a spectrum, right, as you talk about that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there is online impersonation and online material abuse that we've also described as online harms. And again, there are certain elements that has to be satisfied. Does it cause humiliation, distress, alarm, or harassment? So if those things are met, then clearly it is something that, we may want to address, right? But a key thing is this, for those kind of things, there are also other types of legislation that's already in place for scams, for example. Scams, we have 𝘿𝙞𝙤𝙬𝙧𝙖, that has a very comprehensive effort in place to try and deal with those. But you are right in that it can really be very worrying if all these materials are out, and that's why we have to have a bit more flexibility with OSRA to make sure that we can evolve and put in new harms if necessary.
But is that why scams is not part of the 13?
So that's why we put scams, because it's very important, and so that's a separate stream of work that we're doing. This one really, as I mentioned earlier, very victim-centric to try and help the victims also in particular make a claim if they want to. I also wanted to just share with you a story about how real some of these things are. There was an uncle in my neighborhood who came up to me and said he saw, I think it was PM and Assembly's video supposedly selling some financial product and recommending it, right? And so he says, yeah, it's terrible, right? What these things, all these deep fakes and they're making it real. I think it's very worrying, yeah, sure, you guys should do something about it. I say, yeah, you're right, and we are looking into it. But can you tell me which one is the right video? Because I really want to invest. I was a bit flawed because I was like, it's not real at all. Even the whole scheme or
so he saw enough to think like which one's real, which one's not real.
He thinks it's the US.
He thinks, he actually thought that there was some sort of financial product that our leaders were recommending, but what people were talking about were the fake videos. But he wanted to invest in a real video, and I said, the whole thing is a scam. And so it's quite scary how our people can be affected by this.
So you mentioned that it's victim-centric, but I guess it like what you said, it's not binary or anything. If someone is reporting on behalf of a victim,
you can.
That's also possible.
You just need a proper authorization. And, so for parents can do it for their children below 18, and for those who want to ask someone else to do it, because sometimes it's very traumatizing. So that's the other thing we're careful about. You don't want to re-traumatize a victim, and if they in that circumstance wish to get someone else to help them, then you do need some sort of authorization, make it simple, and then someone else can do that for them.
And then from reading about the bill, hearing the thing in Parliament, just want to understand the process. I know right now it's still in the launch phase, like a lot of things are moving, but what I understand is in the OSC there will be a commissioner, right?
Yes.
An individual person. But how, from what I gather, it is up to this person to ultimately make the call on what needs to be done. But is there a reason why there wasn't like a committee? And if there's just one person, how is he or she going to deal with the potential influx of like...
Well, when we talk about it, it's an office of the commissioner.
Yeah.
And as with all agencies, clearly, while the decision lies with the commissioner, it would be a team of people looking and supporting the commissioner in doing that work. But I also mentioned that there are safeguards that we've put in place to make sure that, that the work that the commissioner does is above board. And firstly, we set it quite clearly in the legislation. What are some of the criteria and requirements? There would also be guidelines given as we roll out this work. But there is that avenue. If, let's say, something has been ordered by the commissioner and it's not agreeable with a person or an individual, they can come for reconsideration of that matter. And even if that is not satisfactory, there is an appeal panel. And that comprises of others in the team others who are separate from the office of the commissioner who would look into the matter as well. So with all these various sort of things we put in place, the intent is for it to be as robust, as objective, and as fair as possible to the individuals.
And as it's being rolled out, how much leeway is there to kind of, tweak certain things here and there? Because I know some of the proposed amendments in Parliament even Minister Edwin said, they were useful. And I think while they're not being implemented in this time around, it is, like what you said, a very nascent space. It's very new. What is the process of updating the safeguards or maybe tweaking the processes as we go forward as it's implemented?
this thing wasn't come up with overnight. There was really a lot of thought to it. And the team in MinLaw and MDDI and AGC explored the different permutations. And so, to the best of the ability of the various teams, with inputs from community partners and stakeholders, we've come up with, as best as we can, the current reflection of the online harms that are necessitated, that are necessary to be sort of governed, and the best procedure that we can roll out. So as far as that is concerned, it is in a way, we've got to let it happen first, right? Before we say that, that won't work. So some of those other suggestions are either that have been considered. We have explained it to our colleagues who have shared some of their ideas. But there may be, like, when you implement and then you start coming with, when you start seeing new types of trends or cases, there clearly has to be an ability on our part to evolve and adjust. And we've already made that assurance that we will. If it is a matter of practice, then that can be done through an easier way. We don't have to change the law for it, but it is maybe the what can the Commissioner's Office put in place as protocols to facilitate, maybe simplify forms. All those things don't need like major changes in the law, right? So those things in terms of the operations, clearly it will evolve, we change, we try and do better. But some things that are a bit more sort of in principle, those we have decided this is how the OSC, OSTRA is going to look like, and this is how the OSC will run. So maybe just to give an example of some of these things, if you there were suggestions, say, of different types of harms that were put on that should be added. We've actually thought through it.
I think one of the things that was highlighted was self-harm.
Yes.
That's why was it not included?
Correct. So a publication of materials of self-harm and also sexual grooming, for example. So actually, as I said, OSTRA is victim-led, and it's meant for the victim to complain about something that has harmed them, and then there's a certain process. But when you talk about sexual grooming, the victim is in that process itself, which may, and that person may or may not realize it. And it's an instance that happens over time. So it doesn't quite fit the architecture of this legislation. But that doesn't mean that it's not a bad thing and there's no legislation about it. It's already covered in our criminal part of the house, where we have the penal code and all that to deal with it. In terms of content that's harmful, we already have the Broadcasting Act, which will actually has already requirements for some of materials that are inappropriate to actually be blocked or taken out. So there are other legislation that has already dealt with it, and because of that, we've said we're going to stick to this. And if there is a need for evolving, needs, then we have to adjust it. But for this particular harms that were mentioned, we acknowledge that these are important things and they are harmful, but they are addressed elsewhere, and it doesn't fit sort of the nature of this particular legislation.
For the OSC, the commissioner himself, or him or herself, right, whichever. What is the profile of this person? I know it's still early in the process, but I can't imagine. I mean, I imagine this person kind of probably has to have a legal background, but also like 6 phones where on every social media, he knows everything, or he or she knows everything about social media. Like
Singapore Idol.
And this person needs to be super connected all the time, right? Doesn't he?
Well, like I said, it's an office. So it's not down to that one individual, right? So you have to have a team, and the team would have to inform the commissioner. Of course, we have to be picking one that has the relevant clout and ability to be able to handle this. And it's a tall order. It's a really tough job. But he or she will be supported by the office. And for whatever aspects that may be lacking, we also have partners in place to provide that support. So, for example, if they get queries on, say, legal matters, which is not within the purview of OSC, then appropriate referrals and protocols will be in place to make that, refer that person to the right resources. If they need counselling, for example, then we will work with partners, like, for example, 𝘐𝙬𝙤 and Empowerment, or SCWO, those who are able to then provide the advice and support. So it is about having a team and also knowing what your resources are and making the appropriate channels available to people who need help.
So in terms of like the timeline, because I know in Parliament it was mentioned in 2026, right? But feels like there's a lot of things that need to be put in place. What sort of timeline can we kind of like hope for? Again, understanding a lot of things are in motion.
We have already indicated that it will be in the first half of 2026. And but the work has already started, I mean, so we've already are on the lookout for people, and we really hope to operationalize it. I don't think I'm able to tell you a specific date or time, but yes, it's coming.
Okay.
Yeah, first half, and we're starting off with the 5 harms that I mentioned earlier.
Just talking about what you're saying about the kind of Singapore, the kind of society that we want our children to grow up in, because we're parents of young children and all that, right? I mean, sometimes I'm a bit conflicted when I see videos of a kid being bullied in school. Then at the same time, that means there's somebody taking that video and not acting. Then there's somebody also sending that video around. And is that person whistleblowing, or is he, blowing the cover for his friends and things like that? So I'm a bit conflicted about what is it that we want our kids to, how they deal with all these issues. So for you, like, what do you hope that the next generation, when they see the kind of infrastructure that you're trying to set up for online harms, what will they learn from it, and what can they aspire to build on top of this?
Personally, I feel that the internet, social media are powerful platforms and tools to give a voice, to advocate for values, and to call for justice. So I wouldn't be quick to say judge, I suppose, when people want to demonstrate or make a stand in using that platform. But I think now we need to learn what's in the boundary of okay and not okay to do. I think having views and opinions and sharing that, I think it's important and it's healthy for society to kind of put that out. But we now need to kind of learn the skills of thinking also ahead about how does that harm the person we mention? Is it going to do more harm than good? How is society going to react? Will it bring people together, or will it push people even further apart? Will you actually get people to learn something useful and new, or you just make many people angry and then you'll have a society with, different opinions? So for me personally, it's about finding that balance. I think it's about knowing how powerful it is, but then equipping ourselves with the skills. And you're absolutely right. I honestly don't have an answer to all these use cases, And maybe that's one of the new things we need to learn. Okay, in this case, what's right and wrong about it? I think sending it to everyone may not be the best because these are young kids, and then you're showing everybody that these are the, perpetrators. But perhaps it's like checking the school and then, raising that point, say, hey, this is not right. But I think that's something we have to do together as a community. And each time something happens, the unpacking of what is good and bad out of that. And hopefully we can all do it sensibly while preserving the space for us to all have views about what is the best way to do it, yet not be broken apart because of that.
But what about the option of, banning social media like Australia did, that you mentioned earlier, or banning phones? Like, where is that in the orbit of discussion?
There's so much, in terms of online safety that we have to think about. And there are many different actions that we can do. In respect of the ban, a little bit outside the scope of this online harms thing, but our view is that we definitely agree with the concern globally that we need to take stronger action to protect our young ones. But we are also conscious about repercussions of any action that we take. So we're studying very closely what Australia has announced and what other countries have announced. We want to do something that is meaningful, but not necessarily counterproductive. So in the case of bans, the operationalizing of it is not so straightforward. How do you actually enforce it? And when Singapore does something, we try to kind of do it properly, and we want to do it in our context. is it possible for us? How do we enforce it? Is the social media platforms able to do it? We are looking at all that. And we also want to know that it doesn't have any side effects, because already the youths are saying that, you do that, will run off to other platforms, Roblox or some other gaming platforms, where then we don't have oversight. So we were a bit more conscious. But there's a lot of akan datang in that space, and I'm quite excited. We do think it's important. We're watching very closely, and we're hoping that we can also come up with meaningful actions that will protect our young. But it also is just one approach. Other things include educating parents, working with schools to build the resilience in our kids, working with partners to provide the support and all that as well.
So, earlier in the podcast, you mentioned that there's an element of apprehension about how this is all going to roll out, right? So for you, I think we are on board with the intention, but what are some of the things that you're worried about when it comes to the rollout of the OSRA and OSC?
The apprehension, let me just caveat, largely mine. But generally, I think we are very conscious of making sure that this is something that will in overall be a good thing, right? And so some of the, I guess, concerns or that we have thought about includes how much workload, how much caseload is there going to be? And so, because you kind of need to size the agency accordingly. So like just now you described, will the person be answering like 6 phones, and having, we need to think that through, right, before we set up something. So one is really to make sure that we can calibrate and have enough to ensure that the needs are addressed. So that's one, and hence our decision to kind of start off with a few first. Another is the fact that it's an evolving space, and we have to make provisions for flexibility, but at the same time, we know that that's going to make it very hard to operationalize things when there's so many things that change also. So those are some of the concerns, I suppose, that we have. We also really, I think, at the end of the day, want to create the right mindset and behavior amongst our society. So I mean, this is my personal hope that, it's not that everything is then, there's OSC and OSC just...
Like call police.
Just call police, police job, that's the government's job, you have to do it. I think this is a whole of society effort, and everyone has to take responsibility. Not that we're not going to do the job, but I think for this to truly work and for us to truly protect our children, we all need to be sensible about it, and we all need to play our part and see our role in those in the actions that we take.
And do you see also, I mean, because AI is such a big part of what Singapore's future is, do you see this at odds with like, we got to invest in AI and everything? Do you see this OSRA and AI being at odds? Because the more AI evolves, the more challenges in the digital space there will be, the more catch up that OSRA will have to do. So do you see it as a kind of a arms race between the two, or how do you see AI alongside OSRA?
I feel that AI, like all other events in human history, right, it's a tool that can have negative and positive outcomes. Very much like when computers first came in, the phones first came in. We used to have only pagers. I don't know whether you are from that generation. I'm like the Sangkau pager kind of generation. And television when it first came around, internet. At each stage of that evolution, we questioned the value and whether this is going to be a black or white situation. And I think we all can accept that it will never be either or, right? It's always... there's value in looking at how we can best utilize this to the benefit of our society. But yet, how can we safeguard our people against its harms? So very much like in the physical space, like even when cars were first introduced, I can imagine the horror of people now having to cross the road with a fear of something running over them, and accidents do happen. But you set rules, you set green lights, and the cadence of how one should behave. And then you still have mishaps, but all by and by, generally, people are protected and safe because of this safeguard. So I think that's the same approach you would take with AI and tech. You do want people to benefit from it. It's a waste because we do see its potential.
Yeah.
But there's quite a lot of work, I suppose, in trying to make it sure that people have the necessary skills, awareness, knowledge, and then putting in the sort of rules in place to navigate this. And it's kind of those that have to be done fast because things change so fast. And that's what makes the work exciting and also very daunting at the same time.
So then the OSC and the GovTech, when they see each other at office parties, they'll be like,
No.
I know what you're up to.
I think at MDDI, we take a very balanced approach. So we see the value of pushing through with the advancement. And that's why I think it's good to have different teams looking at if that's your job, it's really to accelerate and look at things. So you focus on that. And then if it's my job to take care, I have to then do my best to make sure that's in place. So we all try to excel and move fast and see how best we can come up with the best outcomes for people.
Awesome. So if people wanted to find out more about OSRA and OSC, is there a place that we can point them to?
Your speeches or anything?
Any
The MDDI website would have our speeches, and they could listen to 𝘖𝙞𝙜.
Yes, of course.
You already had one good podcast on it, and then this one. And we are trying to continue to provide this information in bite-sized form, accessible form, because these things are still being rolled out. And also we will try and make sure that information is out. And we also will work with our partners so that we get the right platforms where people who need this most will be able to get information that they need.
Okay, awesome. Cool. Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing. And I mean, like the online space is scary, and we also are excited to see how this pans out, especially because now I have a kid. And I'm also thinking I would like social media to be banned, but I don't know. I know, like what you said, there's so many things in place, so akan datang lah.
Just to, sorry, on that, right? So, we grew up with a certain sort of ecosystem and background. And I'm sure at every juncture, the earlier generation say, wow, that's really bad, for the generation to come. But we also don't want them to miss out on a life that is potentially very enriching. I mean, in the past, we couldn't connect with our relatives who are overseas, couldn't do video calls. There's so much that we have achieved now with the advancements. And so I'm kind of like a glass half full type of person. So I suppose I encourage you to reframe. Yes, you should worry. I worry. No. I don't mean to. I'm not judging. I'm just saying that it's very understandable. But I would say, I think appreciate that this is life for them. Your podcast, this is the new way of life and communicating already. So things have evolved, and we kind of have to ride along. But how best can we provide the safeguard? So it's about the values. It's about the moral standards that we try to imbibe very early on, that I think should be the focus, rather than to sort of like stop. So I mean, talking to young people, almost unanimous their reaction, like, you ban, I'm just going to run off, and it's such a bad idea, they think, right? So I think maybe in creating some of these new norms and rules, we definitely should involve them, and that's what we do also. We do work with some youth groups, and I mean, I appreciate the sentiment, and I hear that a lot with parents, and in fact, honestly, many people also feel that it's bad. I think it's about calibrating. It's about deciding what is good at which juncture, how you slowly expose it. We need to come up with a strategy of how we expose your child to it, and hopefully prepare the ecosystem well before your child has a, now he's still very young, right? So if she is then ready, hopefully it's a safe space, safer space, and there's.
So I think in future she's going to play this clip to me. She's like, excuse me, years ago, Minister of State Rahayu said this. So please recalibrate.
Stop being so pessimistic there.
Recalibrate.
No, but I think, again, like, the fact that this is very victim focused, right? I think that was something like, our podcast is about looking at things and trying to criticize it sometimes. But sometimes, like, what is there to criticize as well, right?
Yeah.
We want there to be more avenues for victims to safely find recourse for harms done to them. And that's why we are watching this also, very excited about it. And we always try and make it such that everyone who listens, lay people can also understand what's happening.
So thanks a lot for sharing. We just have the final question, which is not related to Ostra OSC. It's the OST the One Shiok Thing. Yeah. So I mean, we can go first. So you still have a few more minutes to choose yours. Terence, you have your One Shiok Thing.
I guess I guess somewhat in the same space, right? But recently the 4K Blu-ray release of a very old Steven Spielberg movie starring Tom Cruise, Minority Report, right? And if you all remember the story, it's about do you remember Minority Report? Predictive crime. So it's about there are some beings in the world who can actually see crimes before they happen. And so Tom Cruise is a detective who, he's in charge of arresting the criminals before they commit the crime. But eventually he gets accused of something himself. So it's just, a very, very, very well shot, very beautiful story and very classic story about the dangers of oversight sometimes in surveillance and all that happen in society. So it just got released in 4K. I have a copy of it, very excited to see it. But I thought, it's something that, in this day and age with social media and the digital world, is also something that we should look at very carefully. Yeah.
I'm not going to lie, when you said Steven Spielberg movie, Tom Cruise, my first thought was Castaway. I don't know why. Then I was like,
it's Tom Hanks.
Yeah, she just said, recalibrate, but wrong movie. Tom Cruise. I remember watching the movie. It was a good movie.
Yeah, classic. Yeah.
Cool. My One Shiok Thing is a YouTube channel that I came across called Search Party. And it is an independent video journalism project that was started by Sam Ellis and Johnny Harris. So both YouTubers who used to be, I think, at Vox, that do a lot of in-depth video journalism. So he just makes videos that are like 10 to 15 minutes. His latest video is the battle for the next Dalai Lama, Trump's case for striking Venezuela, which came out a month ago. And it's just very engaging videos that really break down complex matters into something quite watchable. So, I mean, it's nice to see these sort of channels come up because sometimes you just want to understand things, and if you have to really digest long articles and all, a bit hard.
What's the name of the channel?
Search Party.
Search
Party.
Okay.
Yeah, Search Party. So, they've got like 140 videos.
Wow.
So, so good. And Johnny Harris, we've been following him for a while. So he and this other YouTuber paired up, and now they have a company that makes channels like this. Yeah, cool. What about you?
Mine is this book I'm reading, or rather audiobook that I'm listening to. It's called Calling In: How to Start Making Changes to People You'd Rather Cancel. So it's basically calling in instead of calling out. So it's by Loretta Ross, and it's very American in its context. Or in her descriptions and examples, but I felt that there were a lot of universal and enduring values that resonated with me in how you approach people who are different from you, and how do you then be a very thoughtful and meaningful activist in sharing your cause. So it's about approaching things with love and kindness, and it is meaningful to me because it is kind of related also to kind of the work that I do and my concerns over our behaviors online. In particular, I actually spoke about it in Parliament some time back when I was SPS, and I had articulated my concern about this almost cancel campaign being done against a particular podcast actually. And it was because they said something that was very misogynistic and all that. And I disagreed with what was said, and I thought it was wrong. But I thought the manner in which we kind of came after the people were something we should have thought about. Because I said that, we want to try and it's an opportunity to edify and to let people understand why it's wrong. But when you kind of pounce on people or you do a cancel campaign, it becomes very dangerous because then you lose that opportunity and people then become worse, right? I feel. But I couldn't find actual words to kind of describe what that would be. So in reading this book, it really resonated with me. Because she described and demonstrated why calling in can be very important. She gave options. She didn't say that you must always do calling in. And she described what are the appropriate circumstances. And she gave some strategies about how you should start with yourself and calibrate the conflict, and then approach with love, and then accept the reaction and try and reach a resolution. So there's certain strategies to it. So to me, that's a learning. It felt as though that was what I was talking about, which I couldn't find words for. And I hope that some of those values are some things we can translate in our community, where we are very thoughtful. I think it's important to make a stand when something is not right. But with the internet, it can be quite perverse in how it then translates and how we become judges of people's behavior when they do or not do something, or say or not say something. And I think this was a refreshing take on what then could be done. So marrying those concerns and this, I thought that was something to me very insightful.
How did you come across the book? Was it
so I was preparing for a dialogue with onepeople.sg, and onepeople.sg deals with talking about hard conversations that we have on race and religion, and there were some suggested talking points and ideas, and that concept was introduced to me. So we were looking at the genesis of it, and after I was talking about it, I realized there's a book, and one of my friends at one of the social media platforms, she also said she read it, and so it's something that I ended up looking into, and I thought it was something that I learned, something new.
That's awesome.
And audiobooks is your main way of consuming books these days? Or?
I have different. I have also physical books. Some people gift me books sometimes. And
you're reading the bill all day then. After
I know. Honestly,
can't relax by reading.
Reading is tough for me because my eyesight's just gone now. Like, it's really depending on the size of the fonts. But yes, because I read for work, right?
Yeah.
You don't know audio version of the bill?
Or create a podcast version on Copilot.
So that's why podcast is really cool. My husband's just so into podcasts. He will just turn something on and then just drive. So audiobooks are I'm a mixed bag lah. There's some books I read, some but I find it tough to read. So for me to be able to stumble upon this and to enjoy it and to be able to find it in audiobook is like wow. Yeah. So that's one of my Shiok Things.
Awesome. That's a great Shiok Thing.
But
thanks so much for sharing.
You.
Thank you.
All the best with OSRA and OSC, and excited for things to come.
Yeah.
Thank you for your support in this and helping us also share this information. Thank you.
So, Harish, how was that conversation with Minister of State Rahayu?
Interesting to hear the context for what has been passed in Parliament and the Online Safety Commission. Generally, it's something that I was also quite happy to hear when it was first announced. I think same for you, right? But the thing that stuck out to me that I'm still skeptical about was the fact that the tech companies are all on board. I think that's just a general skepticism about anything that tech companies say. But if she feels that they have a good relationship with the government, then I'm hoping for the best.
Yeah.
For you?
I think the intentions are good. This starts from a place of taking care of the victims first and being very cognizant of even the process of victim reporting an issue can also be very traumatic, right? So they thought a lot about it. Obviously, in Parliament also there were things that came up, that they could maybe do better, and I enjoyed that discussion in Parliament as well. But yeah, it really does. Talking to her, I think it adds a lot of color because it also stems from a place where you can tell that she and her team they've been thinking about this for a long time. There are a lot of anecdotes and stories, that she's brought up about, women that she's spoken to and who are victims as well. And so a lot of her, her drive to push this through or her team's drive to push this through comes from actually hearing victim stories and thinking about how to help them more effectively. So in that sense, I I think talking to her added a lot of color to the bill as well. Yeah.
And I mean, I hope, like what she said, it's an evolving thing. I hope there really are avenues for things to be tweaked, things to be improved, because like what she said, right, we might not be the first country to do it, but we are one of the first. And there's so many unknowns. I mean, hopefully it pans out. Hopefully it becomes really a thing that people immediately think of when they experience some harm or something like not, as opposed to something that it's not the first, second, third, or fourth thought. It's only when you've exhausted everything else, then you go there.
Yeah.
Of course, certain protocols in place you want, but I hope it does well enough for people to know that, okay, there is a space for reporting these sort of things.
Yeah. And something else she left us with is, the question of what kind of society or digital society you want to live in, right? What kind of habits do you want to inculcate in people? And, in the last 10, 15 years, social media, it's really run the gamut from Arab Spring and then, to what it is today, right? Where even world leaders are going on social media to scold their own citizens and things like that. So what kind of rules of engagement do we want for social media? So I think this bill also makes it clearer for everyone as well, right? Not just the victims, but also even the perpetrators and the institutions, right? What's good behavior, what should be done, and what is definitely wrong behavior, right?
Yeah, I mean, I still think social media should be banned for kids. I haven't recalibrated my thoughts.
Yeah, a whole other discussion.
Yeah,
right?
because for just like one reason of putting pressure on the tech companies, But I mean, I'm curious to see where this goes, and of course, the official and grand unveiling of the commissioner.
That's a position I'm very interested.
That should be a process and a ceremony in and of itself.
Wow, this person, I really wonder what his or her background is going to be like.
So we await what happens, but hopefully you are also as interested in the progress of the OSC and OSRA. And hopefully you found this podcast interesting. You can share it with someone who may not have heard of us. You can follow us on social media, and if you want a weekly newsletter that has all the One Shiok Things, including the One Shiok Things in this episode, you can sign up for your little bit at 𝘲𝙤𝙤.com.
And to work with us, just email us at contact@ministryofunny.com or go to ministryofunny.com, check out our portfolio, and there's also a contact us page there.
Sweet. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll talk to you all very soon.